Hi, we're Ellison Preschool 2. We're here to present on functional communication training with PECs that we're using and implementing within the school setting. To first begin our presentation, Kate will take the lead.
Hi, I'm going to first talk about the exploration phase. So the setting that we're going to be implementing in is in Ellison Preschool, which has 200 students ages 3 to 5. 50 of those students are general education, and the other 150 are special education. 50 of those preschoolers are receiving speech therapy services, and half of them are nonverbal. And 5 of those nonverbal students are currently already using PECs. The staff that are at the preschool include one principal and one BCBA, 2 speech language pathologists, 1 occupational therapist, 1 physical therapist, and 4 to 6 parent volunteers. So why is there a need for a change here? There are students engaging in 2 ongoing problem behaviors, fighting over toys and tantrums. These behaviors typically occur after one of the children takes a toy from another without asking, which causes the tantrums and fighting. And only 5 of those 50 nonverbal students are currently using PECs, which creates a major need for the students to learn functional communication skills. So what is it? Functional communication training is a procedure used to reduce problem behaviors by replacing them with a form of communication that serves the same purpose. Before starting anything, an FBA must be done to find the function of the behavior. Once the function is found, the team can come up with a form of communication that serves that same function. And then when the student is able to use this form of communication to achieve that same goal, you should see the problem behavior decrease. So what are some barriers and facilitators? One of the barriers is that for the training, staff have not received their proper training on PECs. The PECs training also requires 2 people per child, and the school lacks the amount of staff needed for implementation. Some of the facilitators are that there is 1 BCBA and 2 SLPs who are knowledgeable in PECs and are readily available to help with training. And those 5 students who currently are using PECs could help be facilitators in the school as well. So our plans for implementation: an FBA will be required to ensure the clear definition of the problem behavior. All staff will then attend a 2-day basic training on PECs, which will also be trained, where they'll also be trained on FCT by the BCBA. After training is completed and the problem behavior is properly defined, the team should meet to discuss how they'll move forward with implementation of FCT using PECs for each student. And the school's capacity to deliver the implementation: currently there are 3 staff members per classroom, and there are 20 nonverbal students total who don't use PECs. With that PECs training, as I previously stated, it requires 2 staff members per child to allow for one hand-over-hand prompting with a communication partner. In order to properly teach PECs to each student, the school may have to recruit more parent volunteers to help out. So there's a little bit of information on the exploration phase. I am going to pass it on to Daniel for the installation phase.
Okay, so the first part of the installation phase will be the funding streams. So no major funding will be needed to implement the PECs procedure, as it's already being used with 5 of the students currently at the preschool. Expanding the usage to the rest of the nonverbal students is relatively inexpensive for the quantity of students. Should the number continue to grow, if there is more students who are nonverbal and need to use PECs, then more funding may be necessary. Also, more funding may be necessary if the preschool needs to hire more staff or provide more training, should the number grow. Resource availability. The school will provide all the resources available for implementation of PECs. PECs are made using common school materials, and the school already has intervention in place with a small group of students, so and the templates are already prepared. And the materials can be easily changed and catered to the student's specific goals and needs. Strategies for personal utilization. The BCBA and the speech therapist will post lessons and resources on the school website and at the main office for which teachers and parents can get ideas and understand PECs. Data will be collected by the PECs team to track the frequency of PECs usage for requesting in the classroom, the type of prompt needed, if any, and what phase they're in the PECs procedure. Supporting policy. PECs will be taught in the classrooms overseen by a member of the PECs team. PECs will be used naturally in the student's environment for consistency and generalization. Programs will be evaluated weekly to ensure fidelity and effectiveness of the implemented treatment. The procedure will be generalized to different locations around the school, such as the classroom and areas where different activities are held. I'm going to hand off the rest of the phase to Naomi.
Thanks, Daniel. In the operational procedures, procedures will be written and given to staff, as well as all of the materials that are needed, like the picture cards, the Velcro strips, the preferred items, foods, and then copies of the preference assessment sheets. And a lot of this can be made available on the school website or on a shared drive where the documents can be stored, so that all things that are needed will be included. The staff, including the stakeholders, the SLP, school classroom teacher, parents, will all be responsible for implementing PECs in the classroom, as well as in the other environments within the school. The written procedural guidelines will be given to those who will be working with the children, and these will have details of the procedures for capturing and contriving the MOs that follow the MANs that they're training. They will also be given information on how to use appropriate prompts. So the vocal, the physical, the gestural prompts that will evoke a MAN. Moving on, talking about the professional development activities. There are training procedures for PECs at different levels. It should be completed by the BCBA until mastery has been achieved prior to working with the child using the PEC system. Ongoing trainings are available and can be done. There are places you can go. There are online portals for this, and there are also BCBAs who can come out and do this kind of training. The trainings could be included, but not limited to, teaching the guidelines of PECs, the foundation, explaining the success of PECs, as well as how to implement it. Materials that are covered are going to be data collection, the basic foundational knowledge, again, prompting, and error correction procedures. Future collaboration will need to happen at minimally a bi-weekly schedule so that they can go over the progress, goals. They can talk about the different errors that are occurring, and any retraining of staff, based on performance, can be done at those times. At the same time or same meetings, they can do practice trials and model correct procedures according to the guidelines. Staff can engage in role playing so that teachers and students perhaps can be modeled and correct procedures can be implemented. Another thing that would be important is to conduct IOA procedures. So teaching the stakeholders how to complete an IOA and how to ensure that consistency among running the procedures is happening at all times. Speaking about the startup costs of PECs, startup cost is typically high. The training involved in becoming an implementer of PECs can be pretty high. However, the ongoing cost of PECs is typically pretty low. Making materials, buying Velcro, making the paper icons, putting together the small books, A lot of these and most of the items that they're manding for will probably not be very expensive. Becoming a PECS manager or getting a PECS manager certificate can cost around $1,500 for that 2-day training that we mentioned earlier. But the basic training is actually about half of that, so around $700 or $800. One of the things to consider here is that it actually takes quite a bit of time to do all of the training, to get everyone on the same page, and then implementing PECS can take a really long time. And while time isn't tied to a dollar amount, it certainly costs something. So that's all I had to say about startup costs. I was going to hand this over to Morgan.
I'm going to start by talking about the objectives and goals. So the client's going to learn to communicate their wants and needs by requesting for preferred items. And in this case, the client is learning to communicate with PECS. They're going to learn to communicate through phase training with most to least prompting, beginning with hand-over-hand training. This is why it needs to be 2 people to 1 child, because 1 adult will help the child take the PEC off and then hand it to the receiving adult, and then immediately receive that desired item for reinforcement. The student is going to begin with requesting 1 preferred item to 3 or more, depending on the individual and their capacity. So the 1 item will be, again, reinforced every single time with hand-over-hand training, and then moving forward through phases, you can begin other goals such as flexibility. The client will independently retrieve and seek out an adult to request for preferred items as the long-term goal in the ending phase. So the client will independently do that, and request for their desired items. Materials. You're going to need pictures of the child's preferred items, and this could include anything such as goldfish or a desired toy, and something that's super reinforcing to start off with so that they can receive it in phase 1, and that will move them forward and be reinforcing for them. You're going to need paper for the picture cards themselves to put those pictures of the desired items on. You're going to need a computer to upload the pictures on and design them. Some people use actual pictures. Other people use maybe more cartoon-like pictures for a more generalized picture of something. You're going to need a printer, a laminating machine, so that they are longevity of the PECS, so they don't get ruined. You're going to cut them out and laminate the PECS into squares. They're usually about 2 by 2, 2 inches, nothing too big. So you can fit multiple on a placemat. So the placemat can be either a PEC book. It can be something that looks more so like a token board or a schedule, but a PEC book would be what would best work for the school. And then you'll need Velcro for the backs of the PECS and the placemat. I have a sample data table, and this shows all the different so it's the days of the week, and you would indicate which phase the child is in, because phase 1 you're going to have more, it's hand over hand, so there's really no incorrect responses unless there is a behavior or non-compliance or resistance. But then you're going to indicate what prompt you used and move forward with the phases. I'm going to move on to Elena, and she's going to discuss the procedure and conclude the presentation.
Thanks, Morgan. So it's time to implement. With PECS, there are 4 different phases, and each phase will build upon another. So it is important that a child has mastered out of the phase prior to beginning the next phase. So let's start with phase 1. So in phase 1, it's just the basic picture exchange. You'll start with just one picture in front of the binder. Make sure it's a preferred activity or a preferred item that the child is heavily reinforced by that you know they want. You will begin to use mostly prompting and have the child exchange the picture for what they want, and immediately provide them with the item or the activity that they asked for. And then you will eventually use backward chaining to systematically fade the prompting and continue until the child is exchanging the picture independently. So now I just have a sample picture of what the binder would look like. So we have 2 items on there. She is showing them which item that they would want, and now they can match the picture to the item and then exchange that picture. So let's go on to phase 2. So phase 2 is distant and persistence. So this is building upon our phase 1. We are basically just having them still exchange that one picture, but giving them a little bit more distance from us and them. So this is why it is crucial to have 2 people, because you want somebody to be able to initially guide them over to their communication partner and exchange that picture. So you will start with teaching phase 2 and using 2 people, one as the communication partner and one as the prompter. Still only have that one item on the front of the binder that you know that they want, that's heavily reinforced. You'll have the communication partner sit about 2 feet away from the child just to begin. And using most least prompting, you'll have the child remove the picture from the binder, walk to the communication partner, gain the communication partner's attention, and then place the picture within their hand. And then again, you will use backward chaining to fade prompting until they are being able to do this independently. And next I have another sample picture of what this would look like. So as you can see, there are 2 people. One, the lady sitting down is holding the chips and waiting for the child to come over to exchange the picture for the chips. You have the other woman standing behind him, which she was prompting him to remove the picture and now is prompting him to go and exchange the picture. So now we'll go on to phase 3. So phase 3, we're gonna communicate and discriminate. So again, building on phase 2, phase 3, we're really trying to concentrate on discriminating between items. So using 2 adults, once again, because you still want to continue with that persistence and distance training, you'll use 2 adults, communication partner again, and one is the prompter. And this time, kind of keep the distance a little bit longer. So sit about 3 feet away from the child. Using most least prompting, have the child open the book, take a picture off for the activity needed. So you'll have at least like 4 to 5 pictures available for the child so that they can discriminate between what they want. And you can even start with pictures that aren't really preferred activities and have like one of them that is a really preferred activity, just to begin with the discrimination. So again, use most least prompting, have the child walk over to the communication partner, gain their attention by tapping the adult on the shoulder or knee and exchange the picture. Once again, you'll be using backward chaining to fade. And again, I have another sample of what this would look like. They only have 4 pictures of preferred activities, and they will have the child discriminate between those 4 pictures for items that they want. You also need to make sure you have all these items available, because if the child picks one and you don't have it available, it'll be a little bit more difficult to actually put together that item means this, that picture means this object. So we want to make sure we have all the items available that we are putting within the binder. Next, we'll go into phase 4, the last phase. So phase 4 is we're going into 2-worded sentences. Again, we need 2 people, the communication partner and the prompter. This time the communication partner will sit about 5 feet away from the child, and using Mostly's prompting, we'll have the child construct a sentence using a sentence strip that will be in front of their binder or their folder, and we will have them use an I want icon in conjunction with the picture of what they want. So you have them discriminate between the pictures that they want, have them pull off that picture, place it on the communication sentence strip, take the communication sentence strip off, have them walk over to the partner, gain the partner's attention, exchange the communication strip, and the communication partner will read the sentence out loud, each part pointing to each picture and showing it to the child so they can really understand what it all means. And then again, you will use backward chaining to fade. And I also have an example of what this would look like. As we can see here, she has 2 pictures. One says I want, and the other one says ball. It's on a strip, and that's what we would want the child to be exchanging. So now we will conclude our presentation. So based on research found on FCT, this intervention should help reduce problem behaviors by giving the children a more functional way to ask for what they want, instead of the behaviors that we are currently seeing within the classroom. If the school can bring in enough staff to aid in PECS training, this intervention should be easily implemented and be successful, considering it's very cheap to implement, and research shows that it does work. So with startup costs being low, getting started with the intervention should not be a problem. However, if additional costs should come up after startup, they would have to look in for additional funding. This may include, like we mentioned, is having more staffing within the school and within the classrooms. But if parents are willing to volunteer to help out, it would still keep the costs fairly low. So that is all we have for our presentation. Thank you for listening.